Hello, we're here with Jeffrey Lowe, the award-winning director, playwright, educator, casting director. I think, have I missed anything? Composer? I think you might have
No, no, that's the list.
So we're here with Jeffrey Lowe. This is really exciting, Jeffrey. Jeffrey is currently our artistic producer for our Asian American Playwright Festival taking place in July this Saturday. And we're so excited to take a couple minutes to really look at a different side of Jeffrey and hopefully provide inspiration and insight to what it takes to really be an Asian American artist. And this is really quite insightful because Jeffrey is not only an award-winning playwright and director, but he has also been the award-winning person for the Lee Weimer's Emerging Artist Award, the Titan Award, so many more, Silicon Valley Arts Council, and so on. But accolades, if you read his bio, it goes way down. But I have just really enjoyed Jeffrey's plays immensely from San Francisco Playhouse, the Secret Lives of Henry. Oh gosh, I'm going to mess it up. Henry Wong, as well as Holdie's Truce, in theater works, Capitol Stage, San Jose Stage, all over Bald Sisters, and so on. It's just really exciting to take a moment to speak with you, Jeffrey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Jeffrey, I'm going to just ask you, start by asking you a little bit about your history. I'm going to go off camera for a second, but
Mhm.
I just want to find out, how did you actually find your inspiration? How did you know you wanted to be an artist?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I sort of found my way to being a storyteller in a sort of roundabout way. I think that for me, I always sort of was interested in storytelling in various adjacent ways. I think before I found theater and before I even watched a play or was in a play and thought about it in a serious way, I really loved video games and I really thought I was going to be a journalist. I thought I was going to be a journalist, and that was sort of the sort of field that I was studying both in middle school and high school. I was in journalism classes, the yearbook classes, and I thought that was going to be the path that I was going to take. And I think that for me, I always connected that to both storytelling and the use of language and the use of words. So I think that that was what that connection was. And then also like in terms of I said earlier, I really loved video games and sort of like in the little pipe dreams that children might have, but folks might not think, especially back when I was younger, they might not think of these things as actual career opportunities. I thought maybe I could learn how to make video games. And what was really interesting was when I was in middle school and early in high school, I sort of poorly taught myself how to use this program that could create these role-playing video games, like these really like simplified role-playing games on your computer. I never really got to build one, but I had intended to build one. And so I taught myself how to use this. And what was really interesting was the point in the game making where I got really lost is I actually just wrote an entire script before I knew how to write a script, before I knew what I was doing. I found that I was getting really, really lost in writing the script of this video game. And it made me realize that what I loved so much about the certain types of video games that I love was the stories and the journeys and learning about characters and learning about the human condition. So I think the combination of wanting to be a journalist and the combination of my love for story through video games, it became a natural fit that when I fell into discovering theater when I was in high school, that it was something that was going to really grab onto me, something that I was going to latch onto. I'll also say that in theater, the thing that really connected with me was the sense of community that being a theater artist sort of brings. The beauty, one of the great beauties of creating theater as opposed to a lot of art forms is it's a collaborative art form, right? I think that you can't put up on a play with just one person necessarily, right? Even a one person show, you still need to have a director, maybe you still need to have a lighting designer, you still need to have a stage manager. You need to have a lot of people. And for me, I was really moved by the different communities that I was able to create in the different found families I was able to create in the early shows that I did when I was in high school and when I was in college. and so I just sort of found myself there, and I think that those experiences along with the discovery of the real power of what it means to be able to express yourself and to have representation and to be able to feel heard and to feel seen was really, really special. I think that's actually the connection, really, right? The feeling seen and representation along with community is a real intersection point where the first play that I wrote was when I was in high school, and most of these actors were people that I had just met or I knew just a little bit. And one actor was my best friend, but everybody else I was sort of getting to know. And it was a play that I wrote, and it was coming from a very personal place. And then as we were in rehearsal, I found that each of these actors really connected to the story that I was telling. And I was like, oh, wow, I thought the story I was telling was very much about me. And I thought it was a very autobiographical play in a lot of ways. But I was astounded when I learned that all of these actors had a different part of the play where they felt like they were seen or they felt like they were heard. They felt their story was being told through the story I was telling, and it was so beautiful, and we all felt more connected in so many ways because we realized how much of our experience was shared, and then we even started to sort of edit the script a little bit, where I'd ask them questions. I said, okay, well, if this part of the play is really resonating with you, tell me more about your experience and how can I sort of intensify this or adjust this a little bit to feel even closer to your experience. And I think that was something that was really special, where all of us sort of felt different by the end of that, where we felt like we understood each other, we had made these bonds, and then we felt like again like a community. And I think that for me, that was how I landed into this. And I was like, oh, this is a really special thing and something that I want to continue to do with my life. What a
Well,
long answer for such a short question. I'm so sorry.
Jeffrey, I think I just opened a nice little spigot there because I mean it is so true. Your works touch. They touch people and they touch me in different ways. You bring the story alive, and your ability to do that as a director is just magical. And what you do with the entire cast and production crew. So
Mm.
it works. It definitely works. And can you talk about how, you've dealt with some of the challenges that you faced during this career?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of challenges. And then I also want to acknowledge there's a lot of privilege that I have that sort of helped me along my way. I think in terms of in most, if not all, art forms, I think that it's really there's going to be a period of time where you are really just going to have a really hard financial time. And for me, being born and raised in the Bay Area and doing my work in the Bay Area, that's just sort of going to be intensified in a lot of ways, because I think that artists in the Bay Area are going to be making the same amount of money as artists in less expensive parts of the country a lot of the time, and we just have to deal with what the cost of living is going to be. But I'll say that the challenges were, there. I started trying to be a professional theater artist at a time when there wasn't as much work or stories or thought about Asian American stories as there are now. But I also acknowledge and want to thank, the David Henry Wongs of the world, the Philip Kangatandas, the Valina Hussey Houston, to Judy Lee Hayes, the Francis Cheese, like all of these people that, I think that from 10 years ago, the growth in opportunities for Asian American stories has grown so much. But 15 years before the 10 years ago, it was even less, where maybe, you got M Butterfly, but that was the one big Asian American play that was being done all around the country that you were going to get for 5 or 6 years or something like that. And nowadays, especially in the Bay Area, you're going to see, just this year it felt like we had a full season. It feels like there's sort of a repertoire of Asian American artists, and although it's still not as much representation as we want to, and we want to continue this momentum, it's really beautiful to see. I had the chance to direct Tiger Style, and before that, we had Four Yellow Rednecks, and then we had um, My Home on the Moon at San Francisco Playhouse, and it's just like it's just, and all of these shows are telling different beautiful stories, and they are giving opportunities to different actors and artists, and they're sharing different community stories and different perspectives of stories, and that's really beautiful. But when I was starting, it wasn't really necessarily that way. For me, I had to work a little harder than I do now to find my tribe, find my community, find other Asian American artists. I know that there were a lot of times where earlier in my career, I was maybe the only person of color in a room, or I was the only Asian American artist in the room. And I had to find connection with all of these artists, all beautiful people, and also find strength in my individuality, right? I think that when I was in college, because of the fact that I didn't think about theater or try to create theater until I was in high school, when I pursued theater in college, I felt behind in multiple ways. There were most of my classmates in college, they were all folks who had done a lot of youth theater. They had fallen in love with theater for a long, long time and had all of this history with it. And for me, I'm like, oh yeah, I discovered theater 2 years ago, and I'm giving this a shot. And in in the beginning, I found myself being really insecure about that. And then there was the point where I had to realize, oh, actually, instead of being insecure about this, I should realize that this is what makes me individual. This is what makes me unique. I have something that no one else has. I have a perspective, and I have a background, and I have an experience that hasn't been tapped into and is in dire need of being told. So artistically, I had to sort of remind myself that that was actually a strength, that I had something to offer that hasn't been offered enough yet. And at the same time, there's still that fight and still that push to justify that the thing that people like me and people like you, Leanne, have to offer is worth offering, right? And I think that's where things like our Asian American Playwrights Festival that we're doing this Saturday comes into play. The summer festival that you all do, all of the work that artists like me and organizations like CATS does is still, we're still fighting to be like, hey, our stories are worthwhile and we should see it. And so I think that's sort of been the challenge is sort of overcoming the history of erasure and the history of being ignored, or the history of being only the joke in all of the TV and media, or only the villain and all of those things. Like how do we overcome them and really feel seen? Because going back to your first question, I think this is going back to your first question, but for me, the reason I do theater, the reason I tell stories is because I feel like us sharing stories is the strongest tool that we have to understanding each other, right? And I know there was this Native American storyteller that came from a family of storytellers, and what they said was, "My family tells stories upon the assumption that it's impossible to hate someone that you know too well." And for me, I was like, oh, the more stories we tell, the more plays we put on, the more songs that we listen about each other, we all just get to know each other better. And eventually, maybe we make it impossible to hate each other. You know what I mean? So I think that that's sort of the challenge and then the hope that we have.
Oh, that's beautiful, Jeffrey. Thank you. That just touched me. And I completely agree, especially it's extremely timely right now. We're learning about somebody else and understanding their story is essential and a help will help us going forward
Yeah.
in this divisive world. Can you talk about um, the role that your parents might have had in encouraging or you, or what words did they share that might have had an impact upon your development?
Yeah, my family didn't value the arts the way that I value the arts, or you value the arts. But in some ways, they were a pretty typical Asian American immigrant. Um, parent experience, where they were very interested in me pursuing more practical careers. They're very interested in uh, being in a more stable position in terms of income and health insurance and how to support a family that I would create or anything like that. And that's terribly understandable. I totally understand it. Um, and I'll also say that, although as frustrated as I might get sometimes with the number of times that, you know, I'll get those typical questions that so many Asian American artists will get, which will be like, did this thing pay you? you know, like I'll have them attend a, a, a play that I was really, really proud of. And like the first question I'll get from my dad will be like, well, how much did they pay you? And that'll be incredibly frustrating, right? Where like, you know, money has nothing to do with it, right? Like, of course, that we want to be able to pay all of our artists, but at the end of the day, what's most important about art is the story and the artistic value of it. It's not necessarily money because that's just capitalism. But also, we live in a capitalist society. We live in America, and at the end of the day, we have to pay rent and we have to have food on the table. So, I completely understand and respect my parents' worry about one of their children being an artist because my answer to your previous question was what was one of the struggles, and it was like it's really expensive to live in this world, and being an artist doesn't pay that much, especially in America, because we don't have the support for artists that other countries might have, and we don't have the government support for arts organizations that other countries might. um so I'll say this. I know a lot of artists, Asian American and otherwise, whose parents really didn't want them to be artists. And I know some artists who are really successful whose parents like still won't speak to them because they didn't become a doctor or they didn't become a nurse or something like that, a lawyer. And for me, as frustrated as I might get at how often one of my parents might ask me how much money did I make off of something that was important to me in ways that aren't financial, or how frustrated I might get when one of my parents might say, "Hey, do you want to join the throes of Filipino nurses instead of like maybe you can just pursue your passion of art on the side while you be a nurse." Um, you know, they they didn't stop speaking to me. They attend all of the shows that I invite them to, and I see them engaging with the stories that we tell on stage in more and more nuanced ways as they've continued to, like, they never really watched a play until I started making plays. And I watched their thought processes on these things grow, where it used to just be like, oh, I'm just here because my son did this and I'm just gonna go home after this and make dinner, and that's the end of it. To now, like, my mom will have opinions about different plays that she's seen, and she'll talk about the things that she found funny or the things that moved her, or there's certain shows like The Four Immigrants that I had the honor of being the assistant director for, and my mom's talked about how she saw herself and her journey through that musical, and those things are incredibly moving to me. So, I didn't grow up in a family of artists, but I think that's what makes me. That's something that makes me unique, something that makes me who I am. And I still, it's they didn't have anything. They didn't really have anything specific to contribute artistically to supporting me. They didn't necessarily, but they didn't stop. You know what I mean? So there's something to be said for that.
Wonderful. Now, Jeffrey, you are an accomplished and award-winning director, playwright, educator. And how did you evolve to those careers? What did you start as, and how did you evolve?
I think the first thing that I did, I won't count actor, right? I acted in high school once. I was really bad at it. No one needs to see that. I'll start with that. Everyone's like, you should act. You'd be funny. And I'm like, no, it's no one needs that in their lives. I promise you, it's really bad. It's just a ball of anxiety and insecurity on stage, and nobody wants that. It's like everything that anyone ever thinks of me being so sure of myself when I'm directing a play all goes away as soon as like I try to act. So we'll pretend that never happened. But I started as a I started as a writer, but it was sort of like a combo of writer and director. That piece that I mentioned that I did in high school, it was a project where the um the senior class drama students were to write and direct their own play. And so for me, because of the fact that I again loved writing this video game that I thought I was going to make, and I was a journalism student, I thought, yeah, I could write a play. How hard could that be? Because I didn't know any better. I just thought it would be easy to write a play, and I really fell in love with it. I really fell in love with writing plays, and I'll say that I reckon myself a playwright that happened to direct plays early in my career, and it was mostly because I I did one I didn't know any better. A lot of my theater career started on I didn't know any better, but I was sort of insecure about allowing someone else to direct the words that I wrote. I thought that they weren't going to get it. And now I'm the complete opposite where I prefer not to direct the plays that I write. I really try to separate myself from that. And so I would say I was a playwright first, and then as I discovered my own voice as a director, that wasn't playwright based. Because before I used to direct my plays just being like, this is how we want to do the words. But when I discovered what I thought was the strengths of directing and what directing actually meant, then I sort of inherited being a director and I separated playwriting and directing. And then eventually I sort of found myself into teaching. I at San Jose State, they asked me to direct a play with their students. And even before that, I wrote and directed a play with Foothill students. And I don't know, I think that I found myself really enjoying the energy of working with students. And I think that it was so interesting where um, whatever frustrations I would have in terms of, oh, I wish that X, Y, or Z project I was able to work with a more diverse group of artists, both in perspectives and backgrounds and all any number of things. Because that's how it started for me, right? Like nowadays, in my with my hat as a casting director, I'm very intentional about how I cast judge. I'm very intentional about diversity in any number of ways diversity finds itself. But I think about those first plays that I did in high school and in college, and those plays were incredibly diverse, but I didn't think about it. Those just were my friends. You know what I mean? Like there was a family that was, the brother, the siblings. It was a brother and two sisters, and the brother was Mexican American, one sister was Filipino American, and one sister was Vietnamese American, and their mom was white. And like that wasn't me trying to be moving, like pushing any needle. That was just my group of friends. Those were just the people who auditioned for the play, and that's who I surrounded myself with. And I found myself as I was working professionally being like, oh, I sort of missed that. I missed having that. And when I worked at a university, sure, these students are still learning. These students are still green. There's still going to be a lot of teaching that I have to do when I work with these students. But like, boy, I don't have to try and find diversity when I'm working with these students because both in background and in thought, these students have so many different ideas and thoughts and perspectives that like are so far from my own because unfortunately I'm old. and, and these students make me feel old now. And it's fun. It's fun to be able to work with different people. So I found myself really enjoying being able to do that. And if these students respond to what I have to teach or respond to any advice that I have to give, then I'm happy to make that connection, happy to give that. And if they don't care for me or my style, then I can step away because it's not for me, it's for them. But I enjoy it.
No, thank you. I feel like I would love to be a fly on the wall. I would love to take your class personally because I think the enrichment and the insight I would get would be huge. I want to learn more about Asian American theater and no
Mm.
better person than you to teach it. how important is education in your career right now? I mean, would you advise an aspiring a director to aspiring playwright to go to college? I mean, can you do it without education, or what's really critical to know?
I think so. I think it's both. I mean, I think there are plenty of people. I think it's about doing it, right? I think it's about doing it and taking it seriously. And the classes are very helpful just for sort of structure, right? Like when I teach playwriting, I spend the beginning of the time just sort of very quickly teaching them very basic and essential rules, but I try not to spend too much time on it because I'm just telling the students, I'm going to teach you these basic rules so we have a starting point, because I want you to break these rules, but I want you to know that you're breaking. I don't want you to go in and just sort of think that everything's willy-nilly. I want you to actively know, oh, this is sort of the baseline of if I'm going to make a well-made play or I'm going to make a somewhat boring standard play. I want to know how I'm breaking those rules. I think that's very helpful. Same with acting. I think that, you know, acting is a craft. And I think that some people can find their way and discover how to become a great actor by just doing it a whole lot. And some people do really well in a place where like trying the exercises and asking questions and learning how to tap into different emotions through different text work and scene study is really, really good and really, really helpful. Um, so I would encourage a lot of people to do it, to take classes and take it seriously. And also, it doesn't surprise me. Like, there's a number of people that are like English majors. English majors make great theater artists. Let me just say that. And it might just be me as a playwright and as someone who's so into words, but I think English majors make great theater artists. I think that they just understand comma, right? Like, they understand what a comma means. They understand what a period means. They understand what ellipses mean. And so I find that a lot of English majors make my favorite actors. Um, but I think that also there's nothing that replaces just doing it. I think that I did go to school, but so much of what I learned was outside of school. The I learned how to direct plays directing the shows that I wrote in my best friend's parents' garage. And you know, my first full length play, no, my second full length play, I needed a fake replica of the Golden Gate Bridge, and me and my dad built it in our garage. And we rented a U-Haul and drove it over to the school to put that in. And it wasn't necessarily good. Like, it wasn't good and it wasn't beautiful, but we learned a lot, and you sort of learn by doing. And I think that making art, like, that's what it is, right? Like, you can take a painting class, and the class is sort of just, you just keep painting that flower over and over and over again. And sure, you could get quote unquote good and better, but I think what it is in terms of true art is what you do is you keep doing it over and over and over again as you discover what your voice is, you discover your version of it. So even when I have an assistant director who's trying to learn from me, I'll tell them, I'll say, I'm going to explain to you why I do what I do. I'm going to show you my processes. I'm going to show you my documents. I'm going to show you how I do everything. But I also want to remind you this is not necessarily how to do it. This is how I do it. And you pick and choose. If anything that I do you respond to, feel free to keep it. And if there's anything that I do that you're like, I would do it differently, do it the way that you want to do it and see if it works for you. Um, and so I think, yeah, education is great, and also just keep doing it. Don't let it stop you. So I think that like there'll be a lot of people who go to college and maybe only get cast in one play. And that might be really hard to have only acted in one play, even if you went to 4 years of college in acting classes and stuff, because at the end of the day, being in a play, there's nothing that replaces that. And at the same time, you never know when it's going to hit you. One of my best friends and one of my favorite actors to work with, Wes Gabria, we went to college together, and I met him when he was a fifth year at UC Irvine, and he was in maybe 4 or 5 shows. And I thought he was so great. I thought he was so talented. And I met him at a boba shop, and I just had to introduce myself to him because I was such a big fan of him and his work. And he was also like the other Filipino on campus. So there was only like 2 Filipino theater artists, and it was like me and him. And so I introduced myself to him, and it turned out that he was in his fifth year at UC Irvine, and in his first 4 years he was never cast in any of the plays. And then in his fifth year, he was cast in like 2 plays a semester, and he was incredible. Or actually, even before he was cast in all these things, the only thing he was cast in was as those racist Asian characters in Anything Goes. So he was like the like silent Asian joke, and then by his fifth year at UC Irvine, he's suddenly like the star of the department, and just an incredible, incredible performer. So you never know how it goes.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. That is such a great story. Jeffrey, can you talk about what are some of the misconceptions of being an artist such as yourself?
Misconceptions about being an artist. Misconceptions about being an artist. Here's the funny thing. So financially, there's 2 misconceptions: either that we're really poor, which isn't always the case, or we make a lot of money, which is also not the case. We're just like just getting by, and it's totally fine. I think the misconceptions are all theater artists are difficult, or they're all sort of egotistical, and I think that that's not necessarily the case. Obviously, those people exist; those people are in the world, but I think that the most successful artists that people really want to work with are always kind people. I think that especially in the Bay Area, like no one's good enough or famous enough to deal with if you're a terrible person or you're hard to work with, right? Or terrible to work with. I think that that probably finds itself more in New York or Hollywood or something where there's a lot of money on the line and like a very difficult star, you deal with it. But for regular mortal artists like myself, I think that the best people that you want to work with are always kind people. I think for me, if I'm doing an audition and there's 2 people who can do a role and one person's a little bit better, but the other person's better to work with, if it's a close enough gap, I'm gonna work with the person who's easier to work with. Because we have to take into consideration the makeup of the room. We work too hard and too long in a small room together for us to have a hard time with each other. So even if a person's a little bit better at auditions, I'll work a little bit harder to help the other person get there, you know. What other misconceptions are there? Um, if you feel like you don't belong, you do. I think that's a misconception. Anybody belongs. You know what I mean? Like theater and art and storytelling is a community for outcasts. It's a community for people who are individual. It's a community for weirdos. So that's totally fine. Just be yourself. We'll love you as long as you're kind. Um, Other misconceptions. It's not easy. It's really hard. I think that's the thing that actually like frustrates me the most is like every now and then. I mean, there's a lot of people, for the most part, there's most people being like, I don't know how you do what you do. And I'm like, we work really hard at it. But every now and then there's like a person who's like, oh, I can do that. And that like really drives me crazy. Like the people who don't realize the craft and the hard work that it takes to do it. Um, and yeah, the other misconception is there's something that you can learn no matter what role you're. You could be a small role in a play, um, but you can learn by watching, or you're still creating a character. I spent 7, 8 years as an assistant director, and I maybe got to give 3 or 4 notes to an actor for an entire 1 month rehearsal process. But I learned by watching how the directors work. I learned by talking to people. I spent a month just passing out postcards for the Dragon Theater in downtown Palo Alto for just so I could have the opportunity to borrow their space to put on my own play because like they couldn't pay me and I couldn't pay them. And there was something to be learned about hard work and just like everybody contributes. And I think that's a misconception that like, oh, I'm just a small role, or oh, I just have a small part, oh, I just do this or I just do that. And I think everybody's role is actually important. They could be smaller. I don't necessarily believe in there are no small roles. There are small roles, but I think everything's important.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeffrey. If there is a parent watching this right now, a parent of an artist, of a student who was really interested in being an actor or being a director or a playwright, what what advice would you provide them? How could they best nurture that or stay out of their way?
Just let them try it. I think that there's there's no use and no harm in stopping your child from trying the arts. Most of us are going to do it a little bit and not do it as adults or not do it as professionals, and that's okay because there's still a lot to be learned. Theater kids learn so much as theater kids, and they they learn to be collaborative, which is going to help you in life. You learn how to take a back seat in some ways, and that's going to help you in life. You learn how to do public speaking, that's going to help you in life. Any art form, you're going to learn how to express yourself, and to be able to express yourself is going to help you in life. And maybe your kid will try to be an actor, God forbid. No big deal. They could give it a shot. And if your kid is as amazing as you know your child is, they're either going to succeed in being an actor or they're going to succeed in something other than being an actor. And they're going to have a time in their life where they tried to be an actor, they tried to be an artist. And like, that's fun too. That's a fun experience. And we don't have to get it on the first try. We don't, when you're 14 years old, unless you're an Olympic athlete, you don't have to know what you want to do for the rest of your life at 14 years old. And even those Olympic athletes, once you're like 28, you have to find something new to do. And so even Olympic athletes have to have a second chapter. So I think there's no use and nothing but tears and bad that'll come from trying to tell your child to not learn how to be an artist. Because also being an artist has nothing to do with your career. Some people are artists for their careers, and some people are chiropractors or dentists or lawyers, and then they have a jazz band at night. And that's totally great too. And that person is just as much of an artist as me, who makes his entire income off of my storytelling. We're art, like, the measure of how much of an artist we are has nothing to do with how much money we make off of our art. So there it is. That's what parents should remember, and maybe remind your child how your value as an artist has nothing to do with how much money you make as an artist. So yeah, go be an artist. Maybe it'll be how you make a career, and maybe it won't be. But if you actually want to be an artist, go ahead and be an artist. And also remember that how you pay your rent, how you put food on the table, how you support your future family can and might and probably will be a separate thing, and that's totally okay. Because art can fulfill your soul in many ways.
Amen. That's fabulous. I think that's yeah, I completely agree, Jeffrey. They say that everyone really has about five careers in their life at least,
Mm,
right? So being as complex and as interesting our lives can be, this could definitely be part of it.
yeah. Because like after I retire from being a theater artist, I'm gonna try to go to the Olympics.
Oh, good, good, excellent, excellent.
Be a sprinter.
I thought the break element would be really good. Jeffrey, the the future of Asian American theater. Can you um just comment on that?
Yeah, I think as I said, we are it's still growing. I think that like I'm so excited by how many Asian American writers are emerging and doing their work and being amazing. And I think that having more writers, having more actors, having more artists is only going to help this grow. And I think that they're all finding their voice, they're all confident, and they're all creating very unique things. And I think that it's only going to be better because parents are going to be able to see how many Asian American stories are out there, and maybe they'll be less scared to let their child try theater because it's not going to seem like they're just letting their child go off to go to a theater camp where they're the only Asian kid. You know what I mean? They'll see themselves on stage, and also maybe we will and then that'll help us grow, right? Like it's just like slowly but surely, the more we get to do it, the more opportunities will be created and the more the pool of people will be there, and that's only going to be good for us.
Wonderful. Yeah, how do you stay motivated during challenging times?
Oh, I'm the most motivated during challenging times. I think that's like a problem of mine. I think that when I'm pushed the most or I feel like people don't believe in me, I start to work harder. I need to go to therapy about it. But I think that's when it's easiest. I think that for me, I start to like freak out when like things are going too well in art, where I'm like, oh no, like they're happy to have me here and everyone believes in me. I'm gonna mess up now. But if I feel like I'm sort of climbing my way out of something or pulling my way up to sort of impress people that don't realize yet that we can create something amazing, that's what motivates me the most. So I don't know. I think I think let it motivate you. Watch the Michael Jordan documentary. Whenever he went through tough times, that's when he was at his best. We're just
Hmm.
going back to the Olympics. We're going back to the Olympics. This
There's
is
a
all just sports.
Here we are approaching the Olympics on Friday, so it's ready to go. Jeffrey, this is absolutely fabulous. I think the insight you've provided for not only artists but also for their parents is going to be is invaluable. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. Any final words?
I don't think so. I just, thanks for watching and create great things.
Yes, and succeed under adversity, no matter what. But thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.